The adoption of the CD required an adequate way to protect it. Something that could be cheap and easily mass-produced. Thus, the CD case was born. You probably own at least a few, especially if you're a little older. Many of us have stacks of these somewhere, with all the music and software we've bought over the years. And I'm gonna be real, these cases are the worst. They're called jewel cases. Movie soundtracks and albums usually come in these nowadays. They're simple, cheap, and they break like nobody's business. Seriously, when we order this stuff at the library, over half of them come in cracked or just completely broken, which means spending extra time replacing them. But then, the extra cases we order for that purpose also come in broken. Jewel cases are cheap and break at the slightest amount of force. Don't even think about dropping them, or you're going to be stacking your discs out in the open. Now, that presents a little bit of a problem. Lots of our old PC games came in these. PlayStation 1 games used these cases too. Raise your hand if you still have your original copies of Warcraft 3 and the Frozen Throne, even if Blizzard wishes you would just lose them. There's positives. You can kind of stack them as much as you want, and they just fit nicely. They're small, and you can buy special shelves to slot them into, which honestly look nice. There are smaller ones that fit neatly on a desktop, or tall ones that look nice amongst other furniture. But when it comes to game preservation, I'm of the opinion that these will be some of the first to go. All it takes is one move, one drop, one accident. And lots of our old favorites, absolute classics, live in these. So what do? Like I said earlier, proper shelving is key. Jewel case racks are really nice aesthetically, but you may not have room for that, depending on how many CDs you own or your living space. During my research for this project, I did see jewel case storage boxes you could buy online. Basically, boxes you'd stack your CD cases in, similar to how I showcased all my console games in a previous video. I don't really trust them. I made mention in that last video that it's a really good idea to not overstuff your storage boxes because game cases can still break, especially when under any kind of force. This is doubly true for jewel cases. My recommendation is that if you're going to go with this method, buy a few and pack lightly. Store these in a way that make them really easy to retrieve, so that they aren't rubbing against one another and scratching the plastic. I would stack them on top of one another instead of along their edge. Since they're so light, it won't really be a problem to move them around if you need to dig. And you know, despite all I've said, when you store these properly, they do look really nice. And if you have to replace the single disc cases, it's really easy and cheap to buy replacements. And there's something about how they hold those inserts and game manuals that just feels right. Now there's outliers. Those multi-disc cases that sandwich like 4 CDs are harder to replace, especially if you're going the whole mile and swapping out the inserts and papers. There are those games that came in paper-plastic hybrid cases, which honestly are way better and surprisingly much more durable, but they don't fit in those traditional stacked shelves. Some things are just going to be more fragile than others, and no matter what we do to protect them, there will be accidents. Time will take its toll. I've provided a few options to consider here, so honestly, just pick which one you prefer, or that suits your space. And don't throw away your copies of Warcraft. In the last video, I made a small error. Some of you very graciously pointed out in the comments that receipt paper uses what is called thermal paper, which does not have ink that rubs off. I'll keep it super simple because I don't know the specifics, but thermal paper uses heat to make text instead of ink. You can check your receipts by doing a little scratch test. If these gray marks show up, it's likely thermal paper. Feel free to keep these if you'd like. From my perspective, and the sake of preservation, I try to remove any foreign objects that aren't supposed to be there, but receipts can provide a good marker of provenance and ownership if that is something you care about. The text on these fade due to temperature changes and age, so if you really want to keep them, maybe think about taking pictures or scans. Thanks to all the commenters who pointed this out. You learn something new every day. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something interesting as well. See you next time.